Good evening, everyone. I am Paula Fontana, Vice President of Strategic Programming Initiatives with the National Black MBA Association. Thank you so much for joining us for Day in the Life at Walgreens. So the mission of the National Black MBA Association is to lead in the creation of educational, wealth building, and growth opportunities for Blacks throughout all stages of their careers as students, professionals, and entrepreneurs. And we accomplish that mission in partnership with organizations that take the time to pour into our members to really provide a pathway to opportunity. Organizations such as our sponsor this evening, Walgreens. Please join me in welcoming our moderator for the discussion, Tim Turner. He is director on the Pharmacy Insights team, where he provides customer analytics and data-driven insights to help drive pharmacy business strategy and decision-making. I can also share with you that Tim's give back game is strong. He currently serves as mentoring co-chair for the 100 Black Men of Chicago, associate board member with Build Inc., and board of directors member for MAPS Corp. Tim, Walgreens, the session is yours.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Paula. I really appreciate that. And it's such a pleasure to be here this evening. And it's really a pleasure and a privilege to be a part of this community and to be on this webinar this evening. I'm so happy that Walgreens has the depth of partnership with the National Black MBA Association to give us an opportunity to connect with the members. And really looking forward to having a great discussion, a great dialogue here this evening with the rest of my colleagues. So we'll go into some introductions and what have you for the group here in a second. But I just want to share a little bit of my journey with the National Black MBA and with the organization and with Walgreens, more generally speaking. So I am currently Director of Pharmacy Insights at Walgreens. I've been with Walgreens for 6 years. Prior to Walgreens, I worked in a couple of years for a tech strategy, for a tech company doing product strategy there. And then I also spent about 4 years working in consulting for a boutique consulting firm here in Chicago called Stacks Inc. And then I spent a year before that working at a nonprofit called the History Makers, also here in Chicago. But my first job coming out of college was an internship with the headquarters of the National Black MBA Association, working there for the summer of 2009 for a few months in the Office of Strategic Programs of all places. So the National Black MBA has definitely been a big part of my career journey, and it's so valuable to me to be able to now be in this role within Walgreens to help build our partnership and to help advance the partnership within our organization and help continue to recruit great diverse talent into Walgreens, and also to continue to support the career development of our Black talent within Walgreens. So we're looking forward to having a great conversation this evening, and I'm now going to hand it off to my esteemed panelists to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about their career journeys. What I've neglected to share is that part of what I do at Walgreens is essentially using data and analytics around the pharmacy business and managing projects to help illuminate opportunities for better serving our patients and customers on a day-to-day basis. And some more information around skills and projects and things of that nature will come up throughout the dialogue. But I'll turn it over to my colleague, Aaron Thomas, who can introduce himself, and then we'll go around the horn here and get things kicked off.
All right, good to meet you guys. So as Tim mentioned, my name is Aaron Thomas. I am the Director of Market Strategy for the Western operation. So I manage the Western half of location strategy within market planning and research. So my team is really responsible for driving growth across all of the different territories, from the Kentucky area to Hawaii, from Alaska down to Texas. Helping to determine where we grow new stores, which stores we relocate, which ones we remodel, and how we kind of just grow in the different communities we serve. So my journey with Walgreens, I joined the company over 10 years ago. I'm not going to say how long ago, but I've been in the market planning and research team since I joined. I started off as an analyst managing New York City, specifically the Bronx and Westchester County. Eventually took over New York City as a whole, and then worked my way up to becoming director of the Eastern operation. So I got to oversee kind of Walgreens acquisition of Dwayne Reed, as well as just a lot of the programs and things that we grew across the Eastern Seaboard at that time. I've been in the West since I would say 6 years now. But again, my whole entire career with Walgreens has been within market planning and research in different roles and different capacities, and leading different teams into where I got today.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Aaron. We'll go over to Keisha next.
Hey, good evening, everyone. My name is Keisha Lewis. I currently work at Walgreens as Associate Creative Director over film and video on the content team. So it's kind of fun. It's a newly developed team. Everyone knows creative is always done, and companies have in-house departments, but the content team are the folks who put out all of the things you see on your social platforms. So it's really fun to be able to join that team and be able to produce some cool things. I've been, how did I get in this industry? Let's see, a very long time ago. Once I graduated school, I started off as a graphic designer, as a junior graphic designer with a really great company. And from there, literally just worked my way up. I've had the opportunity to work on many great brands, but it's moving from junior designer to senior designer to art director to creative director. And as the industry changed, your skills changed. So I went from print only to digital. And then now I'm tackling film and video and all things social.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you so much, Keisha. We'll go to Kamisha next.
Yeah, I'm Keisha Anderson. I'm a senior analyst on our digital insights team. So same department as Tim and Tim, you'll hear shortly. I work mainly similar to Tim in kind of like a customer strategy, voice of the customer role, working with a lot of data all the time, really supporting the digital business and some of those initiatives that we have there. I've been with Walgreens for about 4 years now. I started as a contractor, actually through like a third party, and then was hired on full time. And in my time here, I've been able to see, I worked on the Rite Aid integration when we bought some of their stores. I was able to partner with Kroger and some of the partnerships that we were doing there. And then, yeah, now into the digital space, which I've loved so far.
Awesome. Thanks, Kamisha. And now we'll close it out with Tim Betts on intros here. Go ahead, Tim.
Thanks, Tim. So I'm the newest out of the group. I've been at Walgreens for just over a year on the Pharmacy Insights team, actually reporting up through Tim's line of insights. And so my primary role on the Insights team is using data-driven insights and kind of helping to inform key business partners on key decisions and helping to drive different insights, and that kind of spans from different things. One, from a disease state perspective, so a lens of looking at folks that might have different conditions, and then supporting some different ad hoc requests where we're supporting different marketing teams and some of our clinical teams. So yeah, 1 year in with Walgreens. Prior to Walgreens, I spent some time working in senior housing, kind of the social sector for 5 or so years, and transitioned into marketing and business development in hospital systems, and then later on from a health insurer perspective. So happy to be here. Thank you all for joining.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you all panelists for taking us through your backgrounds. And as you can see, we span a lot of different backgrounds and experiences, skills and capabilities from the creative to the market planning, to the insights and analytics. And so really hopeful that we are able to provide a very robust and diverse point of view about what it's like to work a day in the life of Walgreens. I'll start with, we have a few questions here that we've put together, but we'll certainly keep an eye on the chat. So feel free to drop any questions you have in real time, and we'll address those as we go through. But the first question, I'll put this to Keisha. What skills do you use to fulfill your duties and responsibilities on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis. So some of the hard skills are pretty obvious, right? So certain software applications, things like that. I think we all have to make it a habit now in the times we live in to always be willing to learn something new in a new app. But the soft skills, I've noticed that as I've been promoted and like climbing the corporate ladder, the soft skills become more important. So now, like actually listening, being a leader that leads with empathy. All those things are actually counting more and more, and actually relying on those a lot heavier than a good design aesthetic. I still have to have that, by the way, have to have that. But yeah, actually the soft skills and helping your team to become better and developing them is actually what I lean on more nowadays. And number one, being kind always.
Excellent, absolutely. Aaron, anything you have to add there?
Yeah, I would just say definitely the soft skills is that it's definitely become a more and more prevalent just to become a strong leader of the teams that we kind of lead. My team really focuses a lot on analytics and data and just using that to guide all of our decisions. That's something that my team really focuses on is not just to understand all the different perspectives from what our customers are thinking as well as what management's goals are. But really using the data and the facts and the ways that we can kind of model out what we think is going to happen in the future is just to really package that and use that to guide the future. I think that's one of the biggest skill sets that we look for, especially in my team, is just the research and analytic component to really guide growth.
Excellent, thank you. Next question, and anyone can kind of chime in here, but how do you bring your authentic self to work each day? What are some of the ways that you're able to show up authentically at Walgreens? And maybe we'll start with Keisha on this one.
Yeah, definitely. I think that, well, starters, I think that Walgreens does provide a really good space for us to be our authentic selves. So there's a lot of good people around you. It's easy to kind of come in and have conversations, develop those relationships a little past those typical work conversations. I would consider myself to be pretty bubbly, a little loud. So these are definitely things that I don't change when I'm in the office. I just try and work with. And when other people are bringing their authentic selves into work, making sure to, be respectful and kind and understanding so that everyone can feel comfortable.
Excellent. Thanks, Keisha. Tim, anything you'd like to add?
Yeah, I'd love to jump in on that one. I'm glad I got that one because that's actually something that I have struggled with in some of my previous work history where I didn't necessarily feel comfortable coming to work and being the way that I am. And with it being that way, it also made me second guess myself, maybe second guess my work and my value to the team. I think as my journey has kind of progressed, I've realized that I'm just a better contributor when I can be myself. My team is better. The conversations flow a lot easier. We have lots of thoughts that can be shared across the team. It adds diversity to the conversation. And this is all a lot easier when, as Keisha just pointed out, that we have leadership and things in place over at Walgreens that help us to be able to do that. It's a lot easier when it's ingrained into the work culture. And that was actually one of the reasons that made me want to join Walgreens. It was made clear during my interview process that engagement, inclusiveness were all core to our team's success, and they were interested in just what I brought to the table. So what I try to do is to make sure that I'm engaged into as many things as that I can. I share my ideas, my experiences, and not sharing my ideas even when it's not even the most popular one. So yeah, I think those type of things, being engaged, all help me to actually show up and be that person and be myself, but also with the support of leadership and I guess our work culture at Walgreens is really easy to do.
Tim, can I add one thing to that too? To Tim Bett's point, Roz Brewer, when she first joined Walgreens, one of the first things she ever said was, bring yourself to work. And she gave us her history, her work past about how when she was a certain company, she couldn't do that herself. And then she realized like, that's not gonna get me ahead. I won't have a voice if I don't use the voice that God gave me. So I really appreciate that she said that. And I think that for folks who are kind of teetering, that was your opportunity to go all in, bring yourself to work.
Yeah, absolutely. All excellent points. And I'll actually add another point to that. To build on what Keisha just said, if you want to get a flavor and a sample of what it looks like as far as living your authentic self and being able to bring your authentic self to Walgreens, as soon as you can, go to LinkedIn and type in hashtag #WeAreWBA. Those letters, We Are WBA, and you'll see a series of cards that we have put together across different team members that start with these I am statements about who we are as individuals and who we are outside of work. And so, everything from personal identities, everything from lived experiences, interests. I saw someone who is our VP of one of our government relations organizations who stated that they are a day one Jay-Z fan. And so that is one of the things that I know that person deeper, I know that person better, and a way to connect with them on that level, in addition to, maybe asking some questions to test that day one fanhood to make sure it's actually true. But it's really interesting stuff that we have going on here within the company to help bring that authentic selves, to bring our authentic selves to work day in and day out. I saw a couple of really good questions that came through in the chat. And I'm going to open this up to anyone on the panel who wants to take a couple of these. Do you have any advice for new employees? So any advice for folks who would be starting up at Walgreens? What's a good, any advice that anyone would offer for new employees to the organization?
I could jump in and take that one.
Yeah, go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I since I'm still new, I'm kind of going through that process, right? So one thing that I would encourage, one, be yourself, and that's going back to the idea of showing up as your authentic self. So I would just encourage you to show up as you. Don't just ask questions, ask the right questions. So just as much as, even if you're going through the interviewing process, just as much as that vetting process is for the interviewer, it's just as important to make sure that the role fits your life and the work culture fits your life. So I would encourage you to ask relevant questions, both through the interview process and then after coming on board, kind of the same thing, honing in on your skills. So anything that something that you're good at or something that you want to bring forward in your role, I would suggest you take any additional class, attend a workshop, learn online, watch a YouTube video. I've done a combination of all of the above. But I would encourage you to sharpen your skill sets. And then throwing a kind of plug out there, once you're on board, Walgreens also has a whole lot of different development opportunities where you can just learn more about different things that you're kind of into, things that are relevant to your job. We have Wagyu and different things according to, different teams. So I would encourage you just to kind of hone in on your skills as well.
Yeah, the piece I was going to add to that, Tim, was just don't be afraid to stretch yourself. I think I've seen a lot of new employees come in and they know what they went to school for. They know kind of what they know, but they're a little bit timid when it comes to stepping out and trying to either ask for help or speak up on things they don't know or want to learn more about. So I would say advocate for yourself. An executive mentor I had before really sold me on the idea of creating your own kind of commercial or own 30-second introduction to talk about yourself, but also don't be afraid to add to that, hey, this is what I'm interested in. This is what I want to learn. Is there any way that you can kind of help facilitate me getting some experience in that area? And you'll be surprised at how many people are willing to really step out and help you find connections or opportunities to get that experience.
Yeah, one thing I would add there too is don't be afraid to network or set up meet and greets with other people across the company. I think just the more people that you can connect with up front is really helpful to understanding, all the elements of not just your role, but some of those cross-functional partners you might be working with. So I would utilize those when possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Excellent. Thank you all for those comments. Great responses there. We'll go back to our initial list of questions. I see some more coming through the chat that I'll come back to. But let's go with the question, in what ways does Walgreens support your unique identities and lived experiences? And Keisha, do you want to start us off with that one?
Absolutely. I think that we've seen senior management have these listening tours where you're able to speak directly to C-suite members you normally probably would not in a company this size, where you are asked to be honest, be open, share what you like. And those things are often brought into maybe projects or other things that are happening in the company, which I think is pretty beneficial. Walgreens also has great, a huge amount of business resource groups. And those people identify with you in many different ways. And it's actually even better to join ones that you don't identify with those folks, right? So, I mean, join a BRG and get to know those folks. I think Keisha mentioned networking. That is so vital as a new employee. Once you learn your job first, and then go learn the people that are putting the company together, because that's really helpful. And those things just help to support you, because that is a reflection of your identity. It's a nice way to kind of meet new people, be able to voice things a little bit more honestly in certain smaller groups that you couldn't in larger groups, which is totally fine. And then bring your true self to work, and then have other people bring theirs to work, and you guys can vibe off that. It's really reassuring to have so many BRGs and Walgreens.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Keisha. And I would just build onto that a couple of things. So one, from my experience, I've been with Walgreens for 6 years. There's been a lot of change, evolution, and I would say progress within the organization. And just like a lot of companies and organizations over the last, 2 years, we're now, 2 years out from the anniversary of George Floyd's murder. And that certainly has changed a lot in terms of the conversation that's happened across our entire country, as well as what's happened within Walgreens and other organizations around how they approach inclusion. And, I remember around this time, I guess now last year, there was, to Keisha's point on the BRGs, there was our African-American Leadership BRG actually hosted kind of a safe space for people to have conversations in advance of the announcement of the verdict. And just us being able to, even within the context of work, being able to talk about how stressful and how challenging it was to be able to try to work, put in 8 to 10 hours of work, but still, having this in the back of your mind, not knowing what the outcome was going to be. And so I think just the fact that that space existed was really valuable and really meaningful for us to be able to take, to be able to lean into that. And there's also, other smaller indications as well. We see a lot more in signatures of people putting their pronouns in a lot more events that are inclusive of allies and members of different marginalized communities, and welcoming of allies into those conversations. So I think those are other ways that that lived experiences are really supported and promoted throughout the organization.
And so may I ask one more thing? So I'm on the creative team, and we do all the marketing that you guys see, period. So I don't think this is the way it always used to be, but now we take time to listen to ourselves first, So for example, if you're putting out a pride campaign, not that you are the voice of everyone of the LGBTQ community, but if there are folks in your team who identify as that, let's ask them first. Or if Juneteenth came up and the folks who look like me were pulled together, like, hey, before we show everybody else, we want to show you this first. So I think that those are things that people used to work in silos before and would just go read data and do their own thing. I think Walgreens, by building up diversity now, we're using ourselves too to bounce ideas off of, to get a bit of a more honest opinion about how the customer will really react to what they see.
Yeah, absolutely. Great point, Keisha. And thankfully, so far as of yet to make, I won't call out any other brands, but yet to make the faux pas of having, Juneteenth flavored ice creams or things of that nature, which some other brands that will go unnamed, other retailers that will go unnamed may have done in recent weeks as well. So I saw this great question in the chat. I want to pivot to this, and again, open to anyone on the panel who wants to talk about this. But the question is, how can white allies be or do better to make organizations culturally as inclusive as possible? And if anyone wants to talk about that more generally, or even if there's ways you've seen that show up within Walgreens, I think it's a great question. How can white allies be and do better to make organizations culturally as inclusive as possible?
I can just add my opinion to that. I would just say the biggest thing that white allies can do is really just to educate yourselves, talk about, learn about what issues are happening in the world, what issues are facing, especially, in the United States right now, and really take it upon yourselves to also educate and have those difficult discussions with other circles you're a part of, either it's family or other coworkers or other friends, but don't be afraid to have those conversations and bring up difficult topics and talk about what can be done, how other people can change your behaviors, or just what is within your spheres of influence that you can kind of control. But I think the biggest thing that I know we've talked about in the last couple of years is just how to really get other groups who want to be allies to really take it upon themselves and take some ownership over their own activities.
I would add to, and also it's a matter of just maybe, like you said, education's available for all of us, right? So maybe it's more of not helping the allies that you have so much, but maybe helping other folks who of your own demographic who don't have your point of view. I think that might move the needle a lot further, because I may not ever get a chance to talk to them, but you might. And I think that's pretty important. And then one day, hopefully, we won't even have the word like allies be a part of this. Like, what things that people are looking for is just they're human asks, they're human wants. This is equality for all of us to do our jobs, come back home, be with our families, and be safe. So those types of things, like, we all want those things. And maybe using your voice within a community that looks like you, that may listen to you more, I think is very effective.
Yeah, great perspective there. And I would add, just showing up and being present and being willing to take on sometimes challenging conversations. I think that onus is particular if you are a leader of a team and you have people of color, BIPOC individuals, or anyone from a marginalized community on your team. I think as a leader, the onus is really on you to make sure that you're creating spaces and creating safe environments where conversations can happen, or if folks are just really being willing to reach out and ask what is needed, especially in the last couple of years with the different lived experiences that we have, just checking in on people personally and making sure that you are allowing them to bring their holistic selves to work, and being sensitive and inquisitive about making sure that their holistic self is being supported, especially with broader things that are going on throughout the world that could be impacting the way that they're approaching work on a day-to-day basis. Let's see, I think there was another good question. Looks like most of you all are working from home. Is that correct? Can you talk about the future of work means from a Walgreens perspective and expectations of remote teams? I think there's a decent part of my understanding, generally speaking, and definitely everyone, please feel free to jump in. It kind of varies from team to team. And actually, the organization has actually done a really good job. The company has done a great job, one, promoting flexibility, but also allowing different teams and different groups to kind of discuss and evaluate what works best for them. So I know some teams have a designated day where most, if not all, team members are in office, once or twice a week. Some teams, it is pretty much flexible. I think we do have some departments and some roles that are allowed to be at 100% remote, but that's not, I wouldn't say that's the norm, and certainly not the expectation, I think, for across most teams and across most roles. But for insights, for example, we have 2 days a week where essentially the subtle sort of communication is that if you want to be in the office and you want to expect to see more people in either our Deerfield office or a downtown office, Tuesdays is the day for Deerfield and Thursdays is the day for downtown. It doesn't necessarily mean that, and for those who aren't familiar, in the Chicago area, we have 2 different office locations in our Walgreens headquarters, one in the suburbs in Deerfield and one in the heart of Chicago in downtown. So that's kind of our approach, but I'm curious if others have thoughts or different ways that your teams are implementing and approaching that.
I'll speak for my team. So we don't have a set role either. It's pretty much just come in for, we're trying to say, I think they said we're trying to come in with purposeful meetings, right? So if there's a big brainstorm or if there's a huge meeting to do, then we're all gonna come together and do that. But we are creatives, right? So sometimes being in the same room is where the ideas come together. So we're actually having discussions now to see if maybe we should try to come back maybe once a week or so that we can maybe just kind of feed off each other a bit more and come up with some better ideas that way, because we're utilizing Zoom and Teams, but something about that energy in the same room is definitely different.
Excellent, sounds good. All right, so I'll come back to one of my questions, and I'll send this one over to Keisha. how would you describe the work culture of your department? How would you describe the work culture at Walgreens more generally, but just painting a bit of a picture about what it's like to work at Walgreens from a culture standpoint?
Definitely. I think we've touched on this a little bit, but I can go into it a little bit more within insights. I think one thing that maybe we haven't touched on as much about the culture I appreciate is how many connection points that you have to senior leadership. We have a lot of times where I will meet with not only my manager, but also her manager, and then on top of it, our senior director as well. So all these different touch points to talk about my own development, to talk about, the culture of the team. Is there anything else that, the team could be doing to support me? So I think having those touch points has been just extremely helpful. And then I know we've touched on it, but those organizations across the company as well, and some of those listening tours, a lot of those things just make you feel like you're in a pretty safe space to do your work. Makes work a little bit more fun too.
Excellent. Thank you, Keisha. Anyone else want to add to that?
Yeah, I'll add to that too. I think the work culture within market planning and research is also very similar to what Keisha described. Very collaborative. We work with a lot of different teams across the organization. Even though we are kind of in that hybrid workspace right now, we're definitely still connecting with a lot of different teams, giving them our recommendations and helping them to kind of solve the issues that they have on a day-to-day basis. I think we're a very outgoing, communicative group who really focuses a lot on just ways that we can kind of improve things just for our customers across the board, as well as just staying connected with each other within work and outside of work too. So I think the culture is really, really opened up a lot more, even though the fact that we've not been in the office and not been actually present in Deerfield.
And I can say too, I appreciate it's like a true health and wellness kind of culture, I feel too, because like on the Deerfield campus, for example, I mean, great gym, doctor, masseuse, physical therapist, pharmacist on the campus, healthy food options everywhere, that's your thing. And then in the Chicago office, beautiful gym, and because it's a new office, other things are coming soon. So I feel like those things being present on campus is always very helpful. And I've also had bosses who've been just like, hey, you know what, you need a drink. Like, so they stop and they focus on whatever that wellness is for you, just to stop for a minute to reset, or, hey, why don't you go to the gym or something like that. So I think that's been great too. I didn't expect this culture at Walgreens. I think when I first started, I thought it'd be a bit more strict and way more conservative than it is. So I definitely appreciate the fact that I feel like people care about my well-being even over the work. I feel that way.
Yeah, my wellness spectrum definitely leans more towards happy hours and the post-work beverage as opposed to arduous and strenuous workouts. So totally resonates there as well. I think one thing I would add is that I think a great point, Keisha, around the extent to which health and wellness does permeate the culture. And one of the things that has been more recently become a part of Walgreens in terms of our purpose is, I'm going to not get all the nomenclature and all the exact terms right, but essentially we've kind of reframed our purpose to help consumers, help people live more joyful lives through better healthcare and better access to healthcare. And I think in the last couple of years in particular, that purpose and that the role that Walgreens plays as a healthcare provider, it's been a big part of our strategic pivot. If you've seen some of the news and some of the recent announcements around the different partnerships and the different assets and organizations that we're standing up, there's definitely a much stronger strategic pivot that the company is taking into the healthcare space. But that also became really salient over the last couple of years and during the pandemic in particular, being able to work and support projects that have helped people get access to COVID tests, helped get people access to COVID vaccines. I was just on a meeting earlier today where one of our leaders within the operations and the pharmacy operations space, she mentioned that, we should have a lot to be proud of. The fact that we have this hybrid environment where some people can work from home and some people can work together and work in the office is because of the role that Walgreens played, as well as other retailers, but Walgreens played a big role in getting people vaccinated and getting people back to their regular lives. And from that perspective, as well as from the perspective of, during the height of the pandemic, one of the few retailers where people could go to get masks and could get, Clorox and could get toilet paper. Walgreens was one of the few retailers that really was able to deliver those types of goods as well. And so I think that does reflect in the folks that you work with on a day-to-day basis, being a part of that bigger purpose, that broader purpose. And I think that manifests itself, within the context of how people show up in terms of their personalities and just being generally amicable and generally friendly people and nice people to work with on a day-to-day basis. Next question, before I go back to the chat, question, how can prospective candidates best prepare for a position at Walgreens? And I'll throw this one to you, Tim.
Yeah, thanks for that. And I kind of touched on some of that a little bit. One thing I mentioned, kind of honing in on your skills as you're preparing to go into the interview process and then coming aboard, it would make sense to really hone in on the skills that that you're going to be using on a day-to-day basis or during the interview process, the things that you're going to want to talk about. I've talked about asking the right questions. So not just asking just general questions, but maybe thinking like internally, really thinking about the questions that you want to ask your hiring manager to make sure that the culture fits exactly what you want for yourself. I think one thing that was important for me once I came aboard, my leader, Tim's actually on the call. So Tim he talked about, what do you see yourself doing in the next few years? Even if it's not even on my team, he opened the door for me to say, if you really want to shift to marketing, if you want to shift into these other roles, I'll help you. I'll link you with the right person. He assigned me a mentor, scheduled office hours so we can help develop some of the technical skills that I need on the job. So I would just encourage you to, continue to ask questions, work with your managers, hone in on your skills. Also be yourself, be your authentic self.
Can I throw in there too? Don't become a stalker, but look up your hiring manager and look up even their hiring manager. We have the tool. You have there are tools now available that no one should be able to say oh, I couldn't figure it out. You could figure it out. And I think it goes it goes a long way in interviews when you're able to speak on a level to say hey, I understand that you had this in your work history or this, that. I mean, these things just show you've done the research, because we all know how important data and research is to everyone's role. So just showing that you're able to do that for your interview goes a long way as well. So use your social media platforms to find out who is interviewing you.
Can I add one more thing that Aaron kind of threw out there earlier today? Be open. So that was, you know how you can come into an interview kind of closed off based off of whatever the job description says, and maybe being, kind of sticking to that. But I can say that through my interview process, I learned more about the role and the different opportunities and the development opportunities. Initially, I was a little bit overwhelmed looking at the list of responsibilities and things that I had to take on. But I just was open to it and listened to the conversation that I had during that process. So I would also encourage you to be open.
Yeah, so that's all great perspective. Thank you both for sharing. And someone who is, for me personally, going through the process of recruiting right now, I'm looking for some team members. We have some open positions on my team. Wink, wink. If you want to check it out on my LinkedIn, if you see it there. But one of the things that comes up for me a lot is just as I'm interviewing folks, asking the question, why Walgreens? How does this position fit into your career goals? What is it that drew you to apply to this position? And something that's very specific about the purpose and the mission of Walgreens, or the strategic pivot that the company is making, or just the extent to which the intersection of healthcare and retail and analytics and data science and strategy, being able to speak to the ways in which all those things are really compelling. That's much more, that resonates much more with me as far as a reason why you want to work for Walgreens versus, I've been a loyalty card member for 15 years and, I have a Walgreens down the street, which I love those stories too, but speaking a little bit more specific to what the experience that you're looking for and how this would resonate is definitely much more helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to jump in on this one too, just because I'm also hiring as well, Tim. But I would just echo the piece about LinkedIn and doing your research, because there's news articles coming out all the time about some of the things that we're involved in, especially, you know, just with the COVID testing, with the vaccination. We're testing on new formats in different markets. So we're making smaller Walgreens now. We're partnering with Village Medical in certain areas. So there's just a lot of new ideas and new programs that are coming out throughout the company. So if a candidate can kind of speak to some of that, it really shows that they've done their homework and they're really engaged in, you know, what the company is about and what we're doing.
Absolutely, absolutely. All right, so the next question, I think this might have just gone directly to the host and panelists. So I don't know if everyone can see it, but, and I'll be curious to get anyone's thoughts here. If you were given the ability to solve one problem that would greatly help at Walgreens, what would that be? And for each of us, if possible. So everyone's thoughts on if there was one problem, if we had the ability to solve one problem that would given the ability to solve one problem that would greatly help at Walgreens, what would that be?
I'll jump in on that one. Is health disparities. So for me, social determinants of health has always been kind of a thing that sticks out to me. If we can, and even working in my previous roles and working in communities, and then additionally, I've been in the hospital systems, insurance companies, those issues, the summation of those issues are big in my community. I always, look for ways to try to impact it in any way that I can. But when we're seeing that access to healthcare is different by zip code, depending on where you are, that doesn't sit well with me. So if I could solve for anything, it'd be that and it helps Walgreens on the back end. We can make sure that folks are med compliant and getting their meds, they can afford them, they're healthy. We love to see healthy people. But yeah, that thing that sticks out to me is the one thing that I would like to impact.
Well, ironically, so Tim took my answer. But it is, so health inequality is such a huge deal. So this summer, for example, you're gonna see from the Walgreens content studio, if you guys just continue to subscribe to our YouTube channel, we're gonna start talking about this on a regular basis, because we feel like, again, the more voices, the more eyes, the more discussions we can have about it, then we can impact. And of course, we're a Fortune top 20 company. Of course, we have the power to do it. We need support as well. So I would definitely say health inequity is an issue that we see, and we'll be putting out a lot of content this summer to talk about it. So please stay tuned and be part of those voices that can help move the needle.
Yeah, I would say for the top thing, I would definitely agree with the health disparities, but I will add something else in that I do think would be good to change. And that's kind of how I guess I would say our front end products, especially in the BPC space. I don't think we're very well represented, especially in Black products when it comes to makeup, hair products, whatever it may be. So definitely would love to see that change. And then kind of a two-parter, because was able to bring this up to my manager, at least from a digital perspective. And there's actually a place where we might be able to get some of these products into the store. So opportunities all the time, I think, that if you see these issues and they aren't as big of issues as obviously the health disparities and something that would take more time, definitely places to plug in and start changing things right now.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I think the health disparities, health inequities is definitely a challenge, and it's great to be in a position and a role within the company that can help provide solutions. I mean, if you think about Walgreens, we have nearly 9,000 stores, or roughly 9,000 stores. Don't quote me on these stats, but we have 9,000 stores. I mean, we see about 8 million customers per day. We have tens of thousands of employees. And so if you think about the scale at which a company like Walgreens has in terms of just impacting not only consumers who are shopping, but employees that are working within the enterprise of Walgreens, I mean, I'm not going to be able to do the algebra on that and the calculus, but that's so many households that overlap with Black and Brown communities that are impacted and are touched by Walgreens each and every day. And so the ability for us to be able to have that type of impact is really meaningful. As far as one thing along those same lines, I think I would change if we could. You know, we are all members of teams that are in our support center, so our main headquarters. So we kind of work in the centralized location in Chicago. Really, the underlying engine of Walgreens, it's our field. It's the folks, for those of you who are Walgreens customers, it's the folks in the staff and the team members that you interact with on a day-to-day basis. And there are a lot of challenges that have been, that our team members face. I mean, the last couple of years, they've had to, you know, be in the stores when everyone else was able to shut down at home. You know, the question came up about our ability to work remotely. We're able to enjoy that privilege, but for our team members in the store, they've had to continue to go and open the stores and be in the stores and interact with consumers, even during the height of the pandemic. And then on top of that, you know, having to shift the in-store strategy and in-store operations to administer COVID tests, administer COVID vaccines, all while still managing the day-to-day of just making sure that patients are able to get access to their healthcare on a day-to-day basis. So really the heroes of our company are our in-store team members, our pharmacy techs, our store associates, and our pharmacists. So be nice to them first and foremost, and second of all, you know, if there's anything I think we would be able to do is just help to provide them better support and help to make sure that they are getting you know, supported as much as they can with everything going on. So I know we're at 5:46. I'm not exactly sure how we're doing on time. I think we might have maybe 10 or so minutes left. I want to make sure we don't go over our allotted time. But the other questions, I guess, as we kind of move towards wrapping up here, a couple of questions for the panel. So one is, which we have talked a little bit about this, tools or trainings that you would suggest or recommend for your respective role, or any other kind of final words of advice or final comments from the group. And then if there's any other questions that come through in the chat, we can take those as well. But any thoughts and advice on tools and advice for the group?
I guess I could jump in on this one just for tools and training. Again, with my role, similar to yours, Tim, it's very data and research focused. So just any type of modeling, analytical experience, learning different systems, you know, anything that you can highlight to show how you can review or just analyze different sets of data and come up with recommendations or solve problems that way really helps you to stand out a lot more. I think it can be varied across there's not a specific tool set I would say a team member needs to have, but the more experience you have with, you know, some of the quantitative skills, I think it really helps you just to stand out a little bit more.
And I'll say for my team, it's really important to, you know, certain things, it is what it is, right? Everybody knows creatives live and breathe in any Adobe product ever, right? So, you know, learn all your apps, do all that, that's no problem. But also just become as diverse as possible with your like medium, your platform. So you might love photography, but just know at work, you might end up doing more digital, or you might love digital, you might at work do more print. It's okay. I think Aaron said it earlier, just be more open-minded and be willing to continue just to be well-rounded as a designer and as a creative.
And just the last piece to that, because Keisha just reminded me of a good point, just don't be afraid to stretch yourself, because getting into the role I'm in right now, this is not what I went to school for. This is not a major that existed. It's just, you know, I kind of made my way to it from asking questions and being an advocate and really trying to gain more experience in things that I thought would be, you know, interesting to me and you know, would lead to where I wanted to be. So this may not be, it may not be an obvious career path necessarily, but definitely advocate for yourself and ask questions, be willing to listen and stretch yourself, because you know, there's so much you can do.
I can go. Yeah, for tools, I would say from a digital perspective, especially since Walgreens is so new to the digital world, but I think this can apply to any role, is to look at market trends, see kind of how those competitors are doing, you know, how are we positioned versus how they are positioned. So those things can always be good tools, even if it's just, you know, articles that you're finding online. And then piece of advice, I would say coming into the company, here's me now, I'm like, piece of advice. Maybe we'll switch to Tim and then we'll come back to advice. I'm like, here we go.
Yeah, so Tim, anything you want to
add? Sure. I guess from a skills or a software or something that you might need from a data analyst perspective. Some folks on our team focus on querying data. So if anything you can get, learning SQL, Power BI. If you can use Excel really well, that's very helpful. I know some folks on our team use Python and different tools like that to be able to query data. Not necessarily required, but it's like Aaron said, it's kind of good to have these additional tools to get kind of round yourself out.
Yeah, all great advice and perspective. And, you know, I think those of us who have been through the interview process as well as those who have interviewed, we know that, you know, one of the things we use at Walgreens are mostly used, we have these interview guides and these templates that have these questions. They all kind of drive towards being able to tell a story or to be able to recount a particular experience or a project or an experience that you have. And for those folks who are familiar with the sort of situation, behavior, outcome framework of interviewing. So the question will revolve around, tell me about a time you did X, Y, and Z. And so being able to have the situation in place, being able to have your behavior or the role that you played in that situation, and then being able to illustrate or determine what the outcomes or be able to illustrate what those outcomes are, I think is really important. So all that's to say, in terms of the interview process, coming into Walgreens, have your stories ready, have like the 3 things that you want to be able to illustrate and demonstrate, and being able to have the experiences, the stories, you know, the examples behind those prepared. I think that's the best way that you'll be able to prepare for that interview process. And then that'll put you in a position to be able to talk and speak to what are the things you've accomplished and what are the specific ways you've helped drive objectives and drive towards goals for an organization. And the skills are very important to be able to pair with that. But I think a lot of what folks are looking for within the organization are people who have demonstrated successes. And so being able to have those stories and those examples available offhand will go a long way. So I know we had, or Keisha, I saw you unmute. Did you have a?
I'll come up with my advice now. But yes. One thing that I would say is just don't get discouraged if you do apply and maybe don't get that first position. If you are really interested in Walgreens, there's a ton of times where there may just be somebody internal that, you know, had more skills for that position. But we do keep people kind of in the system still. So it doesn't mean you're completely forgotten about. It may just not have been a perfect fit for that role. So would just say still keep, you know, try applying again and come back and see us.
Yes, absolutely. Great point, Keisha. Walgreens is a huge organization, so there's no shortage of opportunities that are out there.
And hey, Tim, someone had a great question about where can you find jobs besides LinkedIn? So the Walgreens website is the most accurate, actually. It probably hits there before everywhere else. And then to Keisha's point, just hang in there because it's a huge group. So it just takes a long time sometimes, but you're still in the system.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. By all means, everyone, first of all, stop by LinkedIn, look at We Are WBA, check out the post there, and then go to the Walgreens career site, and hopefully you'll find some great information and some opportunities there. And by all means, you can connect with us on LinkedIn, and I'm sure we'll be willing to connect with folks from the organization and answer any questions there as well. So I think that wraps up our time on the panel. I want to give a big thanks to the esteemed panel today. I believe I'm passing it over to Paula for final comments, but thank you all for your great questions. And now passing it back over to Paula.
Awesome. Thank you all for an incredible and insightful session, as well as for your partnership. And thank you all for listening and for joining and for your participation. So I know I have found this session to be incredibly insightful and hope you do too. would love to hear from you. So we encourage you to complete the link for the survey. You'll see that in the chat as well as the QR code here, and give us your feedback. As an incentive, the first 25 people to complete the survey will be entered in a chance to win an Amazon gift card. So do not delay. Again, thank you all for your participation. Thank you, Walgreens, and I hope you have an incredible rest of your evening.